Now that the cold spell has ended, it is time to try and sniff out the next cold spell of the winter 2023-24. Thanks for clicking on to the Saturday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Hope everybody is safe and well wherever you are. Before we continue with the video, be sure to like, share and subscribe. Help me to get to 6,000 subscribers as soon as possible. I do greatly appreciate your support. I'm just around about 100 subscribers off the 6,000 mark, and if you're interested in all things weather, looking at the big picture, looking at the global picture, understanding a little bit more about what is involved in long-range forecasting, well, I certainly hope this would be the channel that you can choose to subscribe to, and also hit that bell and so you don't miss any future uploads of video. Now, things are rather interesting, despite the fact that we are going to see a named storm by the time we reach tomorrow afternoon and into the evening, with potentially damaging winds across a reasonably broad swathe of the UK. In today's video, I want to actually start off by looking at what's going on within the stratosphere here. So far, so good with regards to the winter forecast. I think it's panning out pretty darn well so far with the combination of the MJO and other aspects, but the sudden stratospheric warming has actually occurred, albeit a very, very brief reversal in the mean zonal winds at 60 degrees north and at the 10 HPA level. This is a tweet once again by London and Southeast Weather. Be sure to follow him on Twitter if you're interested in weather in the southeast and beyond. But the ECMWF analysis confirms today that the wintertime stratospheric westerly wind at 60 degrees north at 10 HPA has reversed to an easterly, albeit weakly. Therefore, a major SSW has taken place. Now, this was something I forecasted back at the end of November for the winter forecast, that I thought January would be the time that we would see that taking place. Now, it's not just this stratospheric warming situation that we've seen. We've seen it time and time again from really the late autumn, which probably led, in combination with the MJO phase 7 and 8, into the cold spell that ended autumn, began winter, and possibly the strong warming that was seen taking place 2 to 3 weeks ago led and helped, in combination once again with the MJO, to the cold spell that we have just ended. But he goes on to say, Daniel goes on to say that what does this mean? Well, time will tell. But typically weeks after these events, 2 to 4 weeks on average, we see an influence on the tropospheric weather pattern. A weaker jet stream is often seen, and at high latitude blocking becomes more possible. Now, what's interesting about this is, because it's not your typical major SSW and major wind reversal from west to east to west, it's a brief one, but we've been continuously seeing this stress being put on the polar vortex throughout the majority of this winter so far. And what is quite interesting is, if you look at what's going on within 10 HPA level at the moment, we've got if we look at the anomaly here at 10 HPA, you can see the very strong warming taking place at this moment in time. So there is your major SSW, and we've seen, like I say, the all-important wind reversal, which constitutes a major sudden stratospheric warming situation. Now, we have seen some quite complex overall situation taking place. We've had influence from the troposphere up through into the stratosphere. We've seen a split in the polar vortex. That has likely been the result of that cold spell that we've just ended, both over Europe and over North America. So 2 pieces of the polar vortex has been observed, one over the western side of the Atlantic and one over our side of the Atlantic. Now, what is this current warming going to do to the atmosphere? That is the big question. Now, we did see an SSW back in 2019, I believe it was 2019, and we didn't see any response. In fact, I actually think that the response we did see was in fact a warm spell during that winter season in response to that. So not all SSWs constitute cold weather in the UK, Ireland, Europe, or North America. I think 70% of major SSWs constitutes the colder weather pattern. And you know what the forecast is for the month of February. Now, this is quite interesting. Let's look at the 70 HPA level, which is the lowest portion of the stratosphere. And this is the current overall situation now. If we look at the next 7 days, we have got the opposite of what we had 10 days ago. So we've got the big, strong negative, not positive, but negative over Greenland, over the North Atlantic, and extending into the Arctic. Hence the very strong positive Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation that we are going to see over the coming week here. This is going to constitute southwesterly winds, lots of weather coming in off the Atlantic here. We're back to the wind and the wind and rain regime here in Europe. We're also seeing the same thing taking place over North America as well, and this, as I've already harped on about, is a consequence of the MJO phase 4 and 5. You can see here off the GFS for the upcoming 5-day period. I just showed you the ECMWF control run, I think it was. This is the GFS ensemble, and you can see the overall emphasis being on the same situation taking place. The 6 to 10 day, you can see that actually that becomes even stronger as a positive Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation. We're strengthening the ridge of high pressure over Europe, and that could be very much a warm scenario overall. Now, back to the stratosphere. Lowest portion of the stratosphere, you can see here the blocking, the strong warming taking place Siberia towards Alaska. This is this is the current situation. As we skip towards day 10, so 10 days from now, within the lower stratosphere, look at what happens. You notice the migration of this warming, this higher pressure, away from eastern Siberia, across the top, and it's now repositioned over the Baffin Straits. Now, folks, I could be mistaken, but I believe this would take us back towards a negative Arctic oscillation, negative North Atlantic oscillation pattern as we move into the early portions of February. Now, remember the time frame. You're talking about 2 weeks from a few days ago when we've seen the wind reversal at 10 millibars. You have to allow for a downward propagation of energy. The stratosphere then, of course, expands. The troposphere contracts. It takes time. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks for that influence, that trigger from top downwards. And what I'm essentially meaning here is that it looks as if the GFS is seeing the possible response to what we've just seen taking place in the upper portion of the stratosphere down into the lower stratosphere and down into lower levels of the atmosphere by the time we reach the next 2 weeks here. So skipping out all the way to 336 hours at 70 millibars, and you can see here the warming taking place. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with that overall scenario. Now, if we go back to the 500 millibar height anomaly chart of the ECMWF extended, the ensemble, watch what happens to the positives here week 1. You notice here that we see the buildup of pressure up towards Scandinavia. We need to keep an eye on that, by the way. That's in the next week. That could be somewhat of note in terms of what could start to develop an easterly wind. If that was to happen, we get that high shifting from the UK, from western portions of Europe up towards Scandinavia. Remember what the MJO is doing. It's actually expected to go into phase 6, which would then start to lead to a possible increased chance of a Scandinavian block scenario. Now, as we continue to play through this loop, you notice here what takes place. We start to see the negative over Greenland, over the Arctic region, start to then skip across to Scandinavia. So we replace the Scandi block potential to a negative, and watch what happens with this ridge of high pressure. As that negative then moves into Scandinavia, then that high has to go somewhere. It's forced down underneath and then possibly up towards the North Atlantic and Greenland. that is us going back to what we've just seen, and this would be consequence of potentially the sudden stratospheric warming. Now remember the time frame here, Saturday the 10th of February to Saturday the 17th of February here, and this would be possibly in response to the MJO rotating right back to the phases that we've seen bring cold weather so far this winter. Either it be the end of November into early December or the middle portion of January. We've seen that MJO do full rotation through both cold phases and warm phases back to cold phases. Don't see any reason why the MJO won't go back into the cold phases once again, and in consequence, the stratospheric warming situation may combine with that MJO phase 6, 7, 8 in the one here. So I think it's all to play for when it comes to the next few weeks here, and this is going to be the end game test to my winter forecast. December and January overall has played out pretty well, I think, overall. Let me know in the comment section below if you would agree to that. And we know the situation that we've got in the next week to 10 days. We have got warming temperatures taking place. We'll need to keep an eye on that Scandi block if that develops. What does that do to the UK? Do we see winds coming in from an easterly direction underneath the high, or it may just be all smoke but without any fire? So, if that's the right term. So you can see here, cold on average through the first 20 days of January. The warm-up to come for the final 10 days of the month, is it going to wipe out the cold over the UK and Ireland? If it doesn't, I think the January forecast overall is probably an 8 out of 10 in my humble opinion. So, let's have a look and see what the GFS, the latest run, is showing for the next few days here with regards to the UK and indeed Europe. One front after another is going to be moving across the UK and Ireland. We may see upwards of 150 millimetres of rain across the West Highlands over the next 5 days or so, and even the western portions of Cumbria, northwestern England, through the upslopes of Wales, southwest England, western portions of Ireland, all could see in excess of 100 millimetres of rain falling over the next 5 to 7 day period here. You can see as the jet stream really starts to ramp up, we've seen the ripple effect taking place Pacific North America. We've seen the big turnaround here between Arctic air back to milder once again as that clash takes place over the eastern half of North America, with warm tropical air moving north, cold air coming in from the north. We have got that strengthening jet stream. That jet stream is firing up big time. It's developing Storm Isha. That is going to roar across the Atlantic. But before we even see that system, we are going to see not one, but two, possibly even three fronts bringing a spell of heavy rainfall. And with a squeeze in the isobars, we are seeing some fairly gusty winds. In comes Isha tomorrow evening. The GFS is really going to town with this feature as a 938 millibar area of low pressure off the northwest coast of the British Isles here by the time we reach later tomorrow evening and through the early hours of Monday morning here. It will be interesting to see how strong this area of low pressure can be, how strong the winds are going to be generated by it, but certainly the GFS is going to town with the depth of low. My personal opinion would be that we may drop into the upper 940s, low 950s and millibars. I think the GFS possibly is a little bit overdone when it comes to the depth of the low. But we're not done there. Storm Isha moves into Scandinavia. Then we're followed by another deep area of low pressure in the upper 950s and millibars by the time we reach later Tuesday. And then by the time we reach the middle portion of the week, higher pressure is trying to build in to the UK and Ireland, as you can see here, but we are going to continue to see unsettled and disturbed weather right the way through the rest of this month here. It looks as if higher pressure will build in more so towards the final days of the month. But it's all to play for when it comes to the longer range stuff, and also the next 24 to 48 hours is going to be rather interesting as well with regards to this storm. Stay safe wherever you are, and be sure to check out the global weather and climate report that will be released tomorrow afternoon or early evening. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.